Hello there, good evening to you and welcome to the Primetime News here on Joy News on Multi TV. Coming up in this bulletin, Ashanti Region Police Command assures residents it is doing all it can to arrest crime in Kumasi and describes recent deaths as regrettable. Former Supreme Court judge appeals to political leadership to accept outcome of election petition hearing to help foster peace and further deepen the country's democracy. Lack of transparency in governance and corruption identified as serious shortcomings in Ghana's democracy. President Mahama to champion new African leadership committed to improving the lives of its people during AU Golden Jubilee commemoration. And government describes Minority News Conference on $3 billion Chinese loan as a diversionary tactic. We have all these plus sports, showbiz and business coming up in the next hour. In our very first story, the Ashanti Region Police Command has indicated it is very much on top of the security situation in the capital, Kumasi, and is doing all it can to arrest perpetrators of recent crimes there. At least 7 people have been killed in violent crimes in recent weeks. Addressing journalists, Regional Commander DCOP Augustine Jennings described the deaths as regrettable and appealed to the general public to cooperate with the police. Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin has more.
Out of the 60 suspected criminals arrested at their hideouts in various swoops within the metropolis over the past weeks and screened, 45 have been charged with an intent to commit crime. Intelligence gathered by the police also led to the arrest of 4 suspected arm manufacturers or blacksmiths, 55 barrels, 42 single-barreled gun, 12 AA live cartridges, 4 locally made pistols, 2 foreign-made revolvers. Quantity of blacksmith equipment, among others, were retrieved from them. 3 suspected armed robbers, Daniel Ampusila, alias Buffalo, 18, Dennis Kweku Echampon, 21, an electrician and second-year senior high school student, Akwesi Asamoah, 18, were also apprehended, allegedly on their way to penetrate crimes. A search on them revealed a locally made pistol and 1 live cartridge. Samuel Affair, 20, was later on implicated as the source of the weapon. 33-year-old Collins Boedu Bonsu was also arrested by the police in an attempt to sell a foreign pistol for 2,000 Ghana cedis. Regional Commander DCOP Augustine Jennings addressed the news conference.
We need the cooperation of the general public. We regret inconveniences being caused them, but it is a necessary evil. They should bear with us. They are living in the communities. They are living among them in their homes. So please, they should assist.
The police say several interventions are in place to reduce crime in the area.
And former Supreme Court Judge Justice P.K. Kluje has appealed to the leadership of the NPP and the NDC to accept the outcome of the Supreme Court ruling in the ongoing election petition to help foster peace and further deepen the country's democracy. Speaking at an IEA roundtable discussion on post-electoral dispute resolution, Justice Kluje opined that whatever the court's decision might be, the country would not witness true progress unless there was tolerance for divergent views anchored around political parties with ideological and philosophical underpinnings.
The forum on the theme, Post-Electoral Dispute Resolution, Fostering Peace, National Cohesion and Reconciliation after the Supreme Court ruling, brought together some political party leaders, civil society groups and the security agencies. Speakers at the forum called on the parties to put the national interest above partisan considerations by accepting the ruling of the Supreme Court at the end of the case. The former Supreme Court judge said the winner-takes-all concept underpinning the country's politics since independence should be relooked.
The concept of the winner-takes-all, which is the bane of Ghana politics, after it has been implemented in Ghana, it means that the political party which wins the general elections, however thin the margin of victory, takes over all the departments and agencies of government and may replace the existing staff and employees with party loyalists of its own. This has been carried out to such a ridiculous extent as to distort the whole machinery of government. Even lowly employees with no responsibility for policy formulation are removed or replaced. We have heard of in lorry parks and public toilets being taken over upon the change of government.
He also emphasized the need for a strong decentralized government to encourage grassroots participation in governance.
Perhaps we can mitigate the effect of winner takes all if we decentralize the government. All the successive governments, that is the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party, have both espoused decentralization. They have all retained the present system of highly centralized administration, which enables them to take everything upon accession to power. To be able to decentralize, we must have a strong system of local government. This has been regarded by the successive governments as a threat to their absolute power. At present, local government remains an appendage to the central government. This must change. When the district, municipal, and metropolitan chief executives are appointed by the president, the assemblies are not independent. They must be elected by the members of the assemblies and generally answerable to them. In that case, we can assess the assemblies by their own performance.
Senior research fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Brigadier General Francis Ajimfra, noted there was the need for Ghana to consolidate the high political maturity it has attained worldwide after the Supreme Court ruling. Speakers at the conference later called on the security agencies to put in place measures to contain and forestall any possible political upheavals that may arise in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling.
Now, the quest to liberate Africans from colonial rule led to the birth of the Organization of African Union, now African Union. The prominence and symbolism of the union was very much alive in the days of Ghana's independence hero, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and monuments such as the AU Yard speak to the country's belief. But 50 years down the line, can we still speak of the same zeal and commitment? Abigail Adumakwenchi has more.
On 25th May 1963, the first African organization after independence, the Organization of African Unity, OAU, was formed in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, with the main objective of uniting Africans while liberating them from colonialism. The organization, pioneered by 14 African leaders, had 32 countries joining, and a further 21 have joined over the years. The organization was then disbanded in 2002 and replaced with the African Union in a bid to achieve greater unity and solidarity on the continent. In Ghana, the monumental Liberation Yard, otherwise known as the AU Square, eulogizes the founding fathers of the body.
They set the stage, and I believe Liberation Circle fell within that particular context of something of great importance, of the African Organization of African Unity having been set up. The first head of state of Ghana was the main player in bringing that about. So therefore, we want to establish in his home state a liberation circle reflective of all the ones who came to be members of the Organization of African Unity. So futuristically speaking, anything that has to do with the African Union, and we're talking about...
Dr. Mulana, however, believes the struggle by forerunners to see a free Africa has lost steam.
They were like hardcore committed to see a free Africa. Now, when we fast track today, somewhere along the line, after their demise, we've been taken in a different direction. The priorities over the years, I'm not saying it right as I speak to you now, but it appears that the priorities over the years have drifted away from dead center of looking at Africa as Africa for Africans. Certain entities on the African continent feel more comfortable embracing European ideas rather than trying to foster African ideas or improve upon the African ideas. Whatever you may say that it was wrong, then you go and fix it.
Celebrating 50 years of its existence, the question of whether the African continent could be totally liberated from European occupation lingers.
For the AU, 11 years is perhaps too short a time to unite a continent. In the meantime, the AU Square or Liberation Yard will continue to remind Ghanaians of the contribution of organizations' founding heroes. Abigail Adumakwentri for Joy News.
So, although Ghana has earned international acclaim for its democratic achievement, it still has a long way to go when it comes to corruption and transparency in governance. That was the verdict of panelists at a roundtable discussion on the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, organized by the Institute of Democratic Governance in Accra. The charter aims at finding ways to improve democracy in Ghana.
The African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance was adopted on 30th January 2007 during the 8th Ordinary Session of Assembly of the African Union, AU, and it came into effect on February 15, 2012. It is currently ratified by 17 countries, including Ghana. The Charter is a response to decades of poor governance and particularly mismanagement of electoral processes, human rights abuses, inadequate participation of all Africans in their governance, and unconditional changes of government. It aims to reinforce the commitment of the African states through the African Union towards the universal values of democracy, respect for human rights, the rule of law, supremacy of constitution and constitutional order in the political arrangements of states. In his contribution at the roundtable, Dr. Vladimir Chidanso said, Ghana has failed in the tenets of democracy.
If you have prudence in economic governance, how come all our MDAs, they say all, I read it, but let's say some, overspent their budgets? I mean, how? Who authorized the payments? What is the transparency? Who authorized the payments? When everybody is corrupt in Ghana, when you talk of corruption, you are looking at the Flagstaff House. But it is because the top of the tree is not correct.
He also criticized institutions with oversight responsibility, such as Parliament, for failing to assert themselves.
Is the Parliamentary Oversight Committee ready and happy to work the way they should work? I say no, because both parties understand the patronage system. Do the other state institutions, who are to be the watchdogs of our transparency, I'm talking about transparency, is not the information bill which our journalists want so much, but I'm talking about transparency at all levels. That our vault is empty, who caused them? It's not the head of state who was carrying monies around.
Former Director, Trade and Industry at the AU, Frederick Alipui, expressed worry about the spendthrift nature of African governments.
Imagine what is happening in Addis Ababa now, with all these Hercules aircrafts flying into Addis Ababa with armored vehicles just to come and adopt declarations they will never implement. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? And we sit here and waste that kind of money when people cannot get water to drink? We better think again.
The Deputy Commissioner of Trade, Joseph Wito, also highlighted government's failure to adequately address human rights infractions, especially in mining communities. He pledged Trade will continue to champion human rights causes in the country. The roundtable coincides with the Golden Jubilee anniversary of the AU.
Meanwhile, a section of the public has expressed disappointment in the African Union and criticized the commemoration of AU Day. While some doubted its relevance, others blamed the dependency syndrome in the resolution of the continent's conflict as one of its banes.
No, honestly, I don't think it's worth celebrating. Looking at the fact that we have Libya as part of AU here in Africa, there was a problem and it took the intervention of outside world. I don't see the use of the AU, and so the AU Day, personally, I think it's not worth celebrating. Right.
I mean, I think that it's not worth celebrating, especially if you take a look at, the internal wranglings even in some countries, especially on the African continent, and now that it seems that we sit down for outsiders to come and settle our differences, and I think that we have to condemn some of these things. So for me, I think that it's not worth celebrating.
Well, I don't think it's worth celebrating because looking at the environment, what is even going on in Ghana, we don't see AU flags, we don't see any flag that even shows that we are celebrating AU Day. So, I mean, our leaders must sit up. If you look at the current situation even going on in Ghana here, I mean, petition in court at the Supreme Court and stuff. I think if we want to see something important in Africa, the AU leaders or the authorities must sit up. So for me, I don't think the AU Day is celebrated because you don't see even any flag which even shows we are celebrating AU.
Yeah, I think so. It's high time we celebrated our heroes. So my basic reason why I think it's necessary is the fact that we will celebrate our leaders, our past leaders and our heroes, and then think of a better way of uniting Africa and making it just like a global village. Apart from these two, I don't think it's relevant. Sure, you're welcome.
Yes and no. Yes, because as Africans, we need a day for us to feel proud. The African Union is doing so well. But then, no, because there are still some hitches. Looking at what is happening in Mali, for instance, it's appalling. And the sooner we do something about it, the sooner our leaders, try to, double up, as I normally say, to actually get our economics and finances better, the better it is for all of us. So, yes and no. But I think this year, we should celebrate it.
Yeah, it's worth celebrating it because it's part of African culture.
We remain with news on the African Union. Now, International Relations Expert and Senior Fellow at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, Dr. Vladimir Enchidanso, has blamed the inability of the African Union to integrate the African continent on weak governance by the African leaders themselves. He asserted the biggest bane against the integration of the African continent is the political instability on the continent.
Integration of the African continent has been the dream of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, for decades before it was given a new face of African Union. And so, the continental body continues to seek ways to forge continental, political, economic and socio-cultural unity for African continent. In 2001, the OAU metamorphosed to be African Union in its bid to redefine its mission to make it more effective in addressing Africa's real economic, political and social challenges through the promotion of greater cooperation and unity among the 54 independent African countries, but the Union has still not been able to achieve the total integration of the African continent. According to Dr. Vladimir Enchidanso, the instability in some of the African countries will make it impossible for total integration to be achieved. He says Africa will only make headway through good governance.
We need to stress the importance of good governance. And the good governance tenets is just not constitution, frequent elections, institutions of state. No. Are you having prudence in economic governance? Are you having transparency? Are you avoiding corruption? Are you monetizing or not monetizing your politics? All these things go beyond democracy.
He also said the creation of a common market in Africa will aid integration.
Integration has gotten a logic. The logic is a common market where you break barriers to trade. You cannot be sentimental about it. You cannot just go and break the barriers by force. The people must move freely left and right. Who controls what? But if you have a common market, America is a big common market. China is a big common market. EU is a big common market where you move freely across borders and trade. Trade is the pivot of integration.
Locally, Dr. Enchidanso was disappointed government did not do enough to whip up interest among the citizenry on the commemoration of the AU Jubilee celebration.
The bane of integration in Africa also is the very fact that the ordinary people, you and me, we don't even know it. We celebrate the days, ECOWAS Day, then holiday, AU Day, holiday. But what goes in there? How are we integrating the peoples and their cultures? How are we preparing the people to consider themselves as citizens of ECOWAS or citizens of, say, Africa? Are we doing enough? We are not.
The Abuja Treaty in 1991 projected 34-year trajectory that the continent will be unified into one state, but the projection is now in doubt. African leaders have been urged to double up its effort to ensure the projection made at the Abuja Treaty is met.
You're watching the Primetime Bulletin here on Joy News on Multi TV. Please stay, we'll be right back. You're welcome back. President John Mahama is set to use the role given him at the African Union Jubilee celebrations to champion the need for a new African leadership committed to improving the lives of its people. The president, who is currently in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa, will be sharing the successes in the latest leg of Ghana's democratic journey with his colleagues. Deputy Information Minister Murtala Mohammed has been speaking extensively about the president's trip and the country's foreign policy.
He's using the opportunity to let his peers understand what we have done with the APRM, the contribution of the APRM to the democratic development of Ghana, the extent to which we had even a keenly contested elections in which all Ghanaians have agreed that the only path to resolve those challenges with the elections is through the law courts. And I think that it's an opportunity also to put Ghana on a high pedestal. Like other African leaders who certainly would be presenting or making statements if they so wish on the floor of the AU, His Excellency the President's statement is going to be centered on the new vision for Africa. I don't think that the issue of African leaders now, or Africans are interested in the showmanship kind of leadership. They're interested in leaders who would formulate policies that are geared towards improving the living conditions of his people. And that is what His Excellency the President is going to focus on.
He also spoke about Ghana's current position on the AU.
There hasn't been a dramatic change in our position in regards to this organization. There have been concerns, and with Ghana, we ourselves as a nation agree that we also need to strengthen, if you like, the regional or sub-regional bodies. ECOWAS is a classical example, but we are looking at them really what we can do to improve the living conditions of the people of our continent. Issues of security is another thing, conflicts. And for me, if you have the Deputy President of Kenya visiting Ghana, and then the visit ostensibly was to solicit the support of His Excellency the President or his intervention in the problem of Somalia, what it tells Ghanaians is that Ghana is being reasserted in our lead role as far as the geopolitics of the continent is concerned, and we should be proud of ourselves as a people.
Murtala Mohammed said evidence available, including the visit of the Deputy President of Kenya to lobby Ghana on the Somali situation, is an indication of the crucial role Ghana plays in the continent's affairs. He adds President Mahama will present papers on the African Peer Review Mechanism, a platform which allows the presidents to critique each other's governance. Discussions at this year's summit is set to focus on continental security and terrorism following the growing influence of terrorist groups like Boko Haram in Nigeria and other parts of the continent. President Mahama will also speak on behalf of Africa in Japan during the TICAD conference later next month.
Government has described as diversionary a news conference called by the minority in Parliament to raise questions about the $3 billion Chinese loan. It says the move is to draw attention away from the sterling performance of the NDC General Secretary Johnson Asiedu Nketia, who took to the witness box on Thursday to testify for President Mahama and the NDC in the ongoing election petition hearing at the Supreme Court. Deputy Information Minister Murtala Mohammed told journalists some of the conveners of the conference are members of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Finance who could easily have sought answers to the questions they raised by writing to the Finance Minister.
They talked about the fact that if you look at the CDB loan, the projects that we are executing, if you look at it, about 50% is given to Chinese, and therefore trying to play into the emotions of the Ghanaian people. The issue of the CDB loan, they have made their position very clear. Sometime in April, you had the flag bearer of the MPP who made a categorical statement that in the event And I say in the unlikely event that he becomes the president of Ghana, he was going to abrogate the contract. I thought it was damaging to Ghana, and as an international relations student, I thought it was extremely damaging. But once you do that, you scare investment. So it means that anybody who invests under this government will be having in mind that in the event of that government losing power, my investment will be in danger. This was a statement, a position taken by the NPP, by their flag bearer. So I am not surprised that such statements are also made. I think that yesterday press conference by the minority ostensibly was meant to take the shine out of General Mosquito when he appeared before the Supreme Court, shredded the so-called evidences they submitted to pieces. They were so hard hit, and what they could do at that time was to come out with something that would take the shine. I think that as members of Parliament and leadership to speak as Parliament, we can easily get our information. But they made wild allegations. I'm not surprised. I would just urge Ghanaians to ignore that. I think that the people of this country know the kind of investment this government is having, and then the objective of this government is to improve the living conditions of people.
Commuters of the Mimfetieja Road in the Snafo North Municipality of Bonoahafo will soon see an end to the perennial flooding. Government, through the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing, has awarded a contract for the reconstruction of a collapsed bridge over the River Fete. The 527,000 Ghana cedi project is expected to be completed within 90 days. Nesta Kafuyajoma's report.
The bridge over River Fete always overflows at banks during the raining season, and in the process submerges the road linking Mim to Fetieja, rendering it virtually unmotorable. Construction work on the hospital by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission at Fetieja is currently at a standstill because heavy-duty vehicles are unable to convey the needed materials to site. And for residents of Fetieja, the news brings them a lot of joy. According to the Municipal Chief Executive of Asunafo North, Alhaji Muhammad Kwekudoku, the bridge forms part of the 3.1-kilometer Mem-Fetieja Ring Road that has been captured in the budget of the urban roads for construction this year.
The able technical people behind us, like water resources, hydro services staff. Like they promised, they will be here periodically to make sure that the right thing is done for the project to be completed successfully. I hope they are going to do a good job.
The managing director of the construction firm awarded the contract and challenged government to give equal support to the indigenous contractors as they have been doing to the Chinese contractors.
Appealing to our government that they shouldn't underrate the local contractors. Whatever the Chinese contractors can do, we can do it better than.
For Joy News, Nestor Kafuya Joman's report.
And this is where we take a breather. We'll return with business news. Chief Executive of the Ghana Showbiz Authority, Dr. Kofi Mbia, says the timely provision and sharing of information is vital in enhancing trade among countries in the West African sub-region. The ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, an initiative set up to facilitate trade among ECOWAS member states, will be successful only when information is made available and shared among stakeholders. He was speaking during the launch of a border information center at Olubu, funded by the USAID. The Ghana Showbiz Authority has set up complaints and support unit at the Takrade Port, Aflao, Olubu, and the Kotoka International Airport. Dr. Mbia advised other ECOWAS states to emulate this to break the barriers to trade in the sub-region. Moving on, international relations aspects, Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso says political instability is the biggest blockade to achieving the dream of a united Africa. According to him, the development of a fully functional trade system among member states, as well as the adoption of a single currency and a common central bank, will go a long way to help achieve some of the ideals of the AU. Dr. Nchidanso was speaking to Joy News ahead of the AU Day celebration tomorrow.
Dr. Danso called for intra-regional trade between member states and the need to consolidate democracies across the continent as one strong way of staying united.
Integration pivots itself on trade. how much are we trading amongst ourselves. Intra-African trade is 14%, but integration depends on the intensity of trade. If we are not trading amongst ourselves, we can't create a common currency. And so we must begin to think about speeding the integration process in the sub-regional economic communities so that we can get common currencies. 5 common or 6 common currencies in Africa would be enough to get one common currency in the future for Africa,
Unlike the European Union, which has a set of conditionalities aspiring members have to meet before joining the Union, Dr. Antwidanso says all African member states need to do to join the AU was to become more democratic.
The Africa Capacity Building Foundation is to locate its first regional office for West and Central Africa operations here in Ghana. This was after it signed an agreement with government yesterday. The agreement is, however, yet to be ratified by Parliament. The foundation was founded in 1991 by the World Bank and UNDP in collaboration with African government. Latest figures on the German economy show it barely grew in the first quarter of 2013 as export and investment shrunk, but higher domestic consumption thanks to rising wages helped offset the declines in foreign trade and capital investment, which raised hopes it will help drive a sustained recovery. Gross domestic product rose 0.1% from the previous quarter, but contracted 1.4% compared with a year earlier. The figures showed the economy narrowly avoided falling into a recession. In the previous quarter, Germany's annual economic output shrunk by 0.7%. A recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction. In the latest GDP data, which confirmed a preliminary estimate, only household spending was positive, growing 0.8%. Imports fell by 2.1% and exports dropped 1.8%. Coming up next is smart investment tips and some market data. Time now where we do some international news. And militant leader Mokhtar Belmokhtar is reported to have masterminded the 2 suicide bomb attacks in Niger on Thursday. The Mauritanian news agency Al Akhbar said Belmokhtar supervised the bombings.
Suicide bombers struck a military camp and a French-run uranium mine in 2 towns in northwest Niger, killing 20 people. French special forces took part in an operation at the base near Agadez on Friday morning. Niger's government spokesman Mourou Amadou told the Associated Press news agency that French forces had flown into Agadez after the attack on Thursday morning. Government officials say they made a mistake when they claimed the militants were holding a group of soldiers hostage. However, local and military sources have told reporters 2 soldiers from the Nigerian army who were still with the militants were killed in the assault on Friday morning. The bomb at a barracks in Agadez killed 19 people, including 18 soldiers. 4 attackers died and a 5th held out, but officials said he too was overpowered.
2 men have been arrested on suspicion of endangerment of an aircraft after RAF Typhoon jet was crumbled to escort a passenger plane over the UK. Police boarded Pakistan International Airlines flight PK709, originally en route to Manchester from Lahore, after it was diverted to Stansted.
According to Essex Police, the men being held are aged 30 and 41. The airline, however, said all passengers were safe. The plane was scheduled to leave Lahore, the capital of the Pakistani province of Punjab, in the morning and had been due to arrive in Manchester at 1:30 local time. Reports suggest there had been threats on board during the flight involving some sort of weapon or bomb, although this has not been confirmed. However, one passenger told reporters that the pilot had informed them there had been threats. The man said, quote, "We were about half an hour away from landing in Manchester and we saw that the plane was taking different actions." Another passenger, Umari Norman, told Sky News that cabin crew had said 2 men had repeatedly tried to get into the cockpit. Stansted said the pilot had alerted the authorities to the incident, but the airport did not say what the incident was.
Russia says Damascus has agreed in principle to attend an international conference on the Syrian crisis set to be held in Geneva in June. Its foreign ministry said the Syrian government would participate so that Syrians themselves can find a political path to a solution. This forms part of efforts to get all the sides involved in the peace talks.
Syria's main opposition group entered a second day of talks on Friday, aimed at finding an approach to the conference. The international conference, backed by Russia and the US, aims to find a political solution to the conflict in Syria based on the final communique of the UN-backed Action Group for Syria meeting in the Swiss city in June 2012. The communique called for an immediate end to violence and the establishment of a transitional government that could include officials serving under President Bashar al-Assad and members of the opposition. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry warned the Syrian president on Wednesday that if he was not prepared to make a commitment to find peace in his country, the U.S. and others would consider increasing backing for his opponents. The UN says more than 80,000 people have been killed since the uprising against the Syrian president began in March 2011. There are 1.5 million refugees taking shelter in neighboring countries and an estimated 4.25 million internally displaced persons.
And that's all for international news.
Now it's time for sports. My name is Nyako Fismatabe. Let's get straight to it. Ghana's coach Kwesi Appiah has named the 25-man squad for next month's World Cup qualifiers against Sudan and Lesotho. Dominic Edia returns to the Black Stars as Appiah includes 4 home-based players for the 2 away matches. Goalkeepers Fatau Dauda of Ash Gold, Daniel J from Liberty Professionals and Stephen Adams from Aduana have been called up. Defenders are Harrison Affo from Esperance Tunis, Samuel Inkum of Bastia France, Kisi Boateng from TP Mazembe in the DR Congo, Babaraman and John Boy from Rennes in France, Jonathan Mensah from Evian in France, Awal Mohammed from Maritzburg United in South Africa, Rashid Sumaila from Kotoko. The midfielders are Rabiu Mohammed, also from Evian in France, Edwin Jima Super Sports South Africa, Isaac Kofi of Chievo Verona, Italy, Albert Adoma of Bristol City, Solomon Asante, TP Mazembe, DR Congo, Suleiman Tari of AC Milan in Italy, Mubarak Wakaso, Espanyol in Spain, Christian Achu Porto in Portugal, Emmanuel Ajiman Bedu from Udinese in Italy, Kwejo Samoa from Juventus in Italy. And for the strikers, we have a Samoa-Jan from Align, United Arab Emirates, Dominic Edia, Arsenal, Kiev in Ukraine, Richard Boachiyadom, Mahatma Otu from Hearts of Oak. So that's the lineup for the Black Stars squad. But the Ghana Football Association has secured a 5-year latex foam sponsorship for the Black Stars, which will help as a morale booster for the team to qualify for next year's FIFA World Cup in Brazil.
The deal, worth $100,000 a year over 5 years, is to cushion the side as they embark on yet another exercise of qualifying for Brazil 2014. It is the second time this year that the Black Stars are getting sponsorship after receiving the Glow deal a couple of months ago. Deputy General Manager of Latex Foam, Jamil Mugani, tells Joy Sports his company is happy to associate itself with a winning brand and is looking forward to Ghana achieving some laurels in the near future.
We are supporting them because we want them to bring the cup home. At the end of the day, of course, we are going to benefit in terms of mileage. That goes without saying. But our ultimate objective, if they bring the cup home, we are very proud, we are very happy. I can tell you Latex Foam is a huge family. All the staff and their families and our depot keepers, they're all behind this and they're all excited about this and they're all proud that the company that they represent is giving that extra support to the Black Stars. And of course they'll be even more proud when the cup comes home, God willing.
Latex Foam would also give their products to the players and the technical team, and have also promised that more assistance would come to the team should they qualify for the 2014 World Cup.
Okay, so that's it on the Black Stars. But don't forget tomorrow's UEFA Champions League finals. The Joy marketing team is actually setting up a carnival at the Aviation Social Center, so you can be there and watch Borussia Dortmund Okay, I hope they take the cup actually. That's it for sports. Auf Wiedersehen, but Gifty will be back with more in Showbiz.
Alright, so gospel sensation Celestine Donkor is set to roll out the third edition of the annual Celestial Praise Concert in Accra this Sunday. According to Celestine, the concert will bring some of gospel music's biggest names under one roof to praise and worship God, will be used to raise funds for charity.
2011 Gospel Artist of the Year Celestine Donkor says her concert, the Celestial Praise, is not only targeted at Ghana but the entire world. She's looking forward to changing the face of the Ghanaian gospel music industry through the Celestial Praise concert. This year, the concert is being organized in collaboration with the My Love Foundation, founded by Pastor Mike Ni Abose, presenter of Joy Time and His Presence and a Walk with Jesus on Joy FM. My Love Foundation is a non-governmental organization with the core aim of saving the lives of children and also training them to be self-sufficient. Celestial Praise promises to be exciting as some of the biggest names in the gospel industry are going to mount the stage to join in praise and worship. Artists on the bill include Lord Kenya, OJ, Cynthia Macaulay, Uncle Ato, among others.
Alright, it's another weekend and you might just want to spend it at a social event. This could be a guide. Tonight, there's the Miss Universe Finals happening at the La Palm Beach Hotel and the premiering of the latest movie, The Cheaters. It stars Jackie Appiah, Adete Annan and a host of others. On Saturday, there's a champagne party at Villa Monticello in the airport. Many thanks for staying with us through that 1 hour. And our top stories tonight: Ashanti Region Police Command assures residents it is doing all it can to arrest crime in Kumasi and describes recent deaths as regrettable. Former Supreme Court judge appeals to political leadership to accept outcome of election petition hearing to help foster peace and further deepen the country's democracy. And lack of transparency in governance and corruption have been identified as serious shortcomings in Ghana's democracy. President Mahama is to champion a new African leadership which is committed to improving the lives of its people during the AU Golden Jubilee commemoration. Government describes Minority News Conference on $3 billion Chinese loan as a diversionary tactic. That's it. My name is Gifty Andor Apia. Many thanks for your time and do have yourself a very good weekend.